Welcome to English Story Vault, where we level up your English. Here, we learn through stories that are slow, clear, and engaging. Just listen, relax, and enjoy the journey. 1. Introduction A. Dire situation was escalating. The conflict between two nations, Israel and Iran, was intensifying. The crisis was worsening. President Donald Trump was at an international summit, meeting with leaders from around the globe. Abruptly, President Trump cut his trip short. He departed the summit early, recognizing an urgent need to return home. He flew directly back to Washington, D.C., for a series of critical meetings with his national security team, the key advisors who help him make decisions about the nation's safety. The meetings were held with extreme urgency, centered on the escalating conflict. His sudden return caught many world leaders by surprise. Simultaneously, he posted a series of messages on social media that fueled global uncertainty. Observers were unsure of what America's next move would be. His return, coupled with his online remarks, obscured the situation. The conflict between Israel and Iran was tense and marked by active fighting. Attacks were underway. The president's hasty return signaled the gravity of the problem, while his social media posts left the world guessing America's next steps. Would the United States enter the conflict, or would it attempt to de-escalate it? This uncertainty was palpable. Leaders in other nations watched closely, eager to understand America's intentions. The conflict was destabilizing the region, and people were worried about the future. President Trump's flight back to Washington and his online declarations raised many questions. The world waited to see how America would respond. The path forward was unclear. Marking a time of great apprehension about the future of the region and the conflict itself, the confrontation between Israel and Iran was now the central issue. President Trump's actions were the focal point. His return implied something significant was unfolding. The meetings in Washington were of the utmost seriousness. The security team deliberated on the difficult situation and all possible responses. The president's social media messages only added to the widespread questions and anxiety. People read his posts, trying to decipher their true meaning. No one knew what decision America would ultimately make. The nation's next actions remained unknown to the public. The conflict between the two countries raged on. Tensions remained extremely high. Many hoped for peace, but were uncertain if it was achievable. The president's return was an unmistakable sign that the situation had become critical. His social media activity introduced another layer of confusion and speculation. The world watched Washington intently, searching for any indication of America's intentions in the growing conflict. 2. The public. Ultimatum President Trump chose to deliver his message publicly, using social media platforms, websites, and apps designed for sharing information. Rapidly, with a massive audience, he posted several messages concerning the situation with Iran, addressed to both the Iranian government and the global community. His language was direct and forceful. By using social media, his message disseminated almost instantly. In his posts, President Trump issued a significant demand. He told Iran to surrender. He specified that this surrender must be unconditional, meaning Iran was to give up completely without making any demands in return. He did not detail the mechanics of such a surrender, only that it was required. This was a grave demand from the American president and a powerful statement amid the conflict. President Trump also wrote about a key figure in Iran. This individual is the country's highest religious and political authority, known as the Supreme Leader. Trump stated that U.S. military and intelligence services knew the Supreme Leader's exact location. He claimed they were aware of where the leader was currently hiding, adding that the Supreme Leader was an easy target. This phrase implied that it would be simple for the U.S. military to locate and strike him if ordered. Claiming to know his precise location was a powerful message in itself, suggesting deep U.S. intelligence penetration. However, President Trump added another layer to his statement about the Supreme Leader. He wrote that the United States would not attack or kill him, including the specific words, "at least not for now." This part of the message was likely intended to show that the U.S. was exercising restraint and choosing not to take the most extreme action immediately. He also mentioned that the leader was safe in his location for the moment, which added to the message's complexity. But the post also carried a distinct warning. President Trump wrote that America was losing patience with the ongoing situation and Iran's actions. He warned Iran not to fire missiles at civilians, people who are not part of the military or at American soldiers. The continuing conflict was testing this patience. In essence, President Trump used social media to send a powerful and multifaceted message. He demanded unconditional surrender, revealed knowledge of the supreme leader's location, labeled him an easy target, yet promised not to attack him for now, and warned that American patience regarding missile attacks was running out. The public nature of the messages caused people worldwide to speculate on America's next move. His words created more questions about the Israel-Iran situation and America's potential role, leaving everyone to wonder if they were just rhetoric or a prelude. Too serious military action? 3. Inside the White House, President Trump convened a crucial meeting at the White House with his principal national security advisors. These are the individuals who counsel the president on protecting the country from threats. The meeting took place in the specialized situation room and lasted for nearly an hour and a half. The primary topic of discussion was the conflict between Israel and Iran. Everyone present understood that the United States had to decide its next course of action. Should America become more directly involved? Specifically, should it join Israel in striking key targets within Iran? It was a profound question without a simple answer. Inside the Situation Room, President Trump's top advisors were divided. There was significant disagreement among the team members. Some were deeply concerned about American involvement in the hostilities. They feared it could easily draw the United States into a larger, more prolonged war in the Middle East, a serious risk they were determined to avoid. President Trump himself had frequently expressed his desire to end America's engagement in foreign wars. A core promise of his election campaign was America First, a policy of focusing on domestic issues rather than getting entangled in distant conflicts. Many of his supporters strongly endorsed this principle and expected him to uphold his promise. However, President Trump also held another conviction with equal strength. He firmly believed that Iran must never be permitted to possess nuclear weapons, a position he had stated for years. Intelligence suggested Iran might be on the verge of acquiring the capability to produce these devastating weapons. This was a primary concern for President Trump, perhaps his greatest. His attempts to negotiate a peaceful deal to halt Iran's nuclear program had failed, increasing his anxiety. So, President Trump felt torn between two powerful competing priorities. On one hand was his promise to avoid foreign wars and put America first. On the other was his unwavering belief that Iran must be stopped from obtaining nuclear weapons, even if it required military force. The meeting was about navigating these difficult choices and determining the best path forward for the United States. The decision was of grave importance to the nation and the world. 4. An exodus from Tehran. Mass exodus was underway from Iran's capital city, Tehran. Leaving a metropolis of nearly 10 million people is a monumental task. Even before the American president's warning, many residents had already begun to flee, fearful of the escalating conflict. Now, the roads leading out of Tehran were choked with traffic. The scene resembled a mass holiday evacuation, but the mood was one of fear, not celebration. People were abandoning their homes and their city. Traffic crawled to a standstill. Miles-long queues of cars clogged the highways, making rapid movement impossible. As people were trapped in their vehicles for hours, desperate to get away. Within the city, the subway system, normally packed with daily commuters, was now eerily deserted. Train stations and cars were nearly empty. Urban life had ground to a halt. Most residents were either trying to leave the city entirely or were sheltering inside their homes. For those who remained, life became increasingly difficult. Essential services began to fail. For instance, attacks damaged parts of the city's water infrastructure, making access to clean water a challenge, especially in northern districts. Furthermore, automated teller machines (ATMs) ran out of cash, preventing people from withdrawing money. This made it difficult to purchase food and other necessities. One resident who stayed behind described his experience, said he was remaining in his home and would try to maintain a normal life in his city. He aimed to continue his daily routines, hoping to find an open coffee shop. He resolved to smile at people he met on the street, trying to offer a small measure of comfort and hope. He also planned to call his friends frequently to offer support. He felt that the city's residents needed to rely on one another now more than ever. It was a perilous time for the civilians of Tehran. Attacks were striking the city, and some residential buildings had been hit and destroyed. Rescue teams, like the Red Crescent Group, sifted through rubble. Searching for survivors, ordinary citizens, from nurses to artists, were in grave danger. Civilians were paying the ultimate price for the conflict raging around them. The people of Tehran lived with daily fear, yet many also showed resilience, supporting friends and neighbors through the ordeal. 5 world leaders, worry leaders from across the globe, were gathered at a major summit in another country. These world leaders were uncertain of President Trump's next move. They waited, trying to anticipate his plans as the situation evolved rapidly. The Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, present at the summit, stated he was deeply concerned. He worried about the conflict escalating into a much wider war, which would have devastating consequences for countless people. He also considered the impact on his own country. He spoke about the economy, noting that a major global conflict often leads to a rise in the cost of living. For example, energy prices could surge, meaning people would have to pay more for essentials like home heating and fuel for their cars. This was a significant concern for the UK leader and his counterparts. This anxiety was not limited to the leaders at the summit. People worldwide were apprehensive. They feared the outbreak of a broader war involving nations like America, Israel, and Iran, which could have a massive global impact. A primary concern was energy security. The region at the heart of the conflict is a critical supplier of oil and gas. If the fighting disrupted the flow of oil, prices would spike everywhere, severely damaging the world economy. Businesses could suffer, and people could lose their jobs. The leaders at the meeting discussed these potential outcomes, hoping the situation would de-escalate and peace would be restored. But President Trump's words and actions were difficult to interpret, which only deepened the world leaders' sense of uncertainty. They understood that the next steps taken by either America or Iran could change everything for many nations and their people. They could only wait and watch, worried about what the future might hold. 6 planes in the sky. The situation in the Middle East was growing more severe and dynamic. The United States military began repositioning a large number of aircraft from bases in America across the Atlantic to Europe. Over 3 days, at least 30 military planes were transferred. These were a specific type of aircraft, KC-135 tankers. The primary function of these planes is critical for extended military operations. They carry massive amounts of fuel and can connect with other aircraft, like fighter jets and bombers, in midair. This process, known as aerial refueling, allows combat planes to receive fuel without landing. It enables them to remain airborne for much longer periods and fly to distant targets for critical missions. Moving such a large contingent of refueling planes to Europe was not a routine maneuver. Military analysts who study such movements described it as highly unusual. This significant deployment of tanker aircraft suggested that a major operation was being planned. The experts concluded that the U.S. military was preparing for intensive combat operations, likely to be executed in the Middle East, the epicenter of the Israel-Iran conflict. These plans could involve the use of highly advanced B-2 bombers. These aircraft are known as stealth bombers because they are engineered to be extremely difficult for enemy radar systems to detect. They can penetrate enemy airspace covertly to conduct surprise attacks. B-2 bombers are particularly effective at striking well-fortified targets, such as facilities built deep underground. Iran possesses a critical nuclear site at a location called Fordo, which is buried deep beneath a mountain. While Israel had been striking numerous military and nuclear sites in Iran, it lacks the specific aircraft or munitions needed to successfully destroy a target as hardened as Fordow. Military experts assess that only the United States possesses the massive, powerful bomb required to destroy a facility buried so deep underground. This specialized munition is designed to penetrate layers of earth and concrete before detonating. Therefore, the movement of the KC-135 tanker planes could indicate that the United States is preparing to provide support or take direct action itself. They might be readying B-2 bombers to attack the underground nuclear site at Fordow. This large-scale movement of aircraft demonstrated that the U.S. military was making serious preparations for potential military operations in the Middle East. The world watched these planes journey to Europe, wondering what this mobilization truly signified for the future of the conflict. 7. Israel's request to Syria has persisted in its attacks on Iran, striking numerous targets, including sites linked to Iran's nuclear program and military infrastructure. Israeli leaders have defined a clear objective for this campaign, they state. The war against Iran will not conclude until one specific facility is destroyed. This critical target is the Fordow nuclear site. The Fordow facility is unique because it is constructed deep underground, where Iran enriches nuclear materials. Its subterranean location makes it exceptionally difficult to attack effectively. Israel believes its own munitions are not powerful enough to penetrate and destroy Fordow. This site has long been a primary target for Israel due to its central role in Iran's nuclear ambitions. Israeli leadership believes that only the U.S. military possesses the specific bombs required for this task, a type of massive, powerful bomb. Sometimes called a bunker buster, is designed to burrow deep into the ground before exploding. America is thought to have these specialized weapons. Consequently, Israel wants the United States to use these powerful munitions to help neutralize the Fordow site. Israel's leader, Benjamin Netanyahu, has spoken of this need for assistance. He desires U.S. support for Israel's military campaign, though he's careful with his public statements. He acknowledges that the decision for America to join the fight rests solely with President Trump, stating it is America's choice. However, it is evident that Israel strongly hopes for American military intervention, particularly for the challenging target at Fordow. The fact that Israel requires these specific American bombs for a key objective increases the pressure on President Trump within Israel. There is widespread discussion and speculation about whether America will provide this help. Israeli television has featured debates about if the United States will become directly involved in the strikes on Iran. Israel's national security chief has stated unequivocally that the war will not be over until the underground site at Fordow is neutralized. This underscores the target's importance to Israel's strategy and its dependence on external assistance. Israel feels it needs America's help to finally address the threat from this deep underground nuclear facility. The need for these unique, powerful American bombs places considerable pressure on President Trump. Israel is asking for help, but cautiously, as it waits to see if America will commit the military power needed to destroy Fordow and help end the war. 8. What happens now? The 60-day period designated for reaching a diplomatic agreement with Iran has expired. The deadline passed without a deal. President Trump had hoped that negotiations would lead to Iran peacefully halting its nuclear program, setting a 60-day limit for the talks. With that time now up and no agreement reached, the situation has entered a new phase. In the aftermath, President Trump appeared to believe this outcome strengthened his position. He seemed to think that the threat of military action gave him more leverage. He felt that if Iran believed the United States was prepared to fight, it would be more inclined to accept his terms. The world is now watching with intense focus. People in many countries are waiting anxiously, trying to decipher President Trump's intentions from his public statements and military movements. They are asking, do his strong words represent a genuine plan for war? Is the United States truly preparing for a major military operation against Iran? Or is he merely using these threats as a tactic to pressure Iran back to the negotiating table under his conditions? Is this a strategic bluff to force a deal, or is it a prelude to conflict? This is the central question, and no one outside of a very small circle of advisors knows the definitive answer. The future feels deeply uncertain for everyone, compounding. This uncertainty is a significant concern over the stability of the Iranian government. Some analysts and leaders believe the current regime in Tehran could potentially collapse under the combined internal and external pressures. If the government were to fall, it could unleash a period of profound instability. This possibility is a serious worry for nations in the region and around the world. But for now, the immediate future remains a mystery. The next steps are simply unknown. Will President Trump attempt new negotiations using the military threat as a tool? Will he decide to authorize the use of force? Or will internal events in Iran trigger a sudden change? The world continues to wait for answers in a tense and volatile situation.